Morning, everybody. I hope you're having a good day, and thank you for coming back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm so glad to invite you back to visit. And I want to tell you, the fall and the winter can be a very tricky time to grow. We just got some breaking news. The planting zone maps have changed. So 50% of the country in no specific order has gone up a half a zone, and the other 50% has stayed the same. And I mean, I guess since I stumbled, I don't know where 50 cents zone is. I mean, maybe you guys know them, I don't know. But that could be good news, I guess. But ultimately, doesn't make a hill of beans, doesn't matter. Unless you're growing flower zones, it's just kind of a waste of time. But that being said, depending on where you are, there's a way to maybe extend your harvest in less plantings and perpetual harvest, and the way we should change our techniques from season to season. And this one will really focus in the fall season and into winter, because that's where we are. Now, before we get started, I mean, you can see the garden's doing well. There's a lot of green still. We've got straight rows. Hey, there you go, that's a win. We've got stuff planted, stuff about to be harvested, stuff that we hope to harvest. So everything's going overall fairly good. Everything we plant with a purpose this time of year. And I mean, really all year, but especially this time of year, because there's some vegetables that we're gonna plant and that we have planted out here that you can harvest in multiple ways. And I mean, essentially we can get more out of less. So you don't have to plant as many in order to fit your family's needs. And everything, gardening's super personal. So it can, it changes from person to person, from family to family, group to group. But for us, we try to keep it going in the right direction. And if you look around our garden, we've got some very productive crops where we don't need to plant a whole lot. And then we've got some space fillers, stuff that takes up a lot of space and stuff that doesn't. So I'm gonna walk around and show you the different things and how my harvesting techniques change over the seasons in order to increase what we get. And essentially, you can grow as much food out of a small garden in the fall, even in the spring, as you can in a big garden. So you just have to be a little smart about it. Something I've been thinking about lately that I'm curious about, and let us know in the comments, do you let stuff grow in the fall to try and keep it going and extend your season? Or do you just all out let it grow and let it just die off when the first frost comes or the repetitive frost comes? Which one do you do? Just want to start over here on this bed, and you can see we've got a couple rows of radishes in the front, and then we've got a row of bok choy, and these are prime examples. I mean, the bok choy here, it's getting pretty good. It's really starting to grow, but essentially, once you harvest, that plant's gone. I mean, I'm not sure if you can do a cut and come again. I'm sure you could try, but once you pull that out, that's all she wrote. Same goes for the radishes, and that's fine. If you think about, and if you've been following the channel for any amount of time, this works out really good for us because our goal is to turn around and replant this bed, with onions. We're gonna fill this bed out with onions. But in some of the other beds, we want them to go to bed and go to rest for a period of time. And that's where this will really help out, because we can plant the certain crops in there. So once those bok choy's up, onions go in, radishes come up, onions go in, and then we're done. And then we just grow them, you know what I'm saying? But over here, for instance, in this bed, we've got bok choy row, and then we've got a row of kale. And, 4 plants of kale, 5 plants of kale is an astronomical amount of kale, believe it or not. This kale, for instance, these plants will grow, we'll cut and come again, so we'll trim them, eat the leaves. We'll never harvest this whole plant. These plants will be in our garden all the way until it's time to put our sweet potatoes, which is ultimately what's gonna go in this bed next year. So I mean, you'll see over the period of the winter through the videos that this kale will in fact be in the garden, and by not cutting that plant and just harvesting the leaves, you'll always have it growing. And that's why we grew 5 plants this year, because if you think about it, if we took 2 leaves off each plant once a week, I mean, that's 10 leaves, depending on how you eat kale and what you use it for. We use it for smoothies and stuff. Then it's not really gonna be, you're not gonna run out of kale. You'll actually have extra and be wanting to give it away. And if we need it for dinner, we'll have extra. Now, if we take that bok choy, for instance, we planted that, first of all, we had extras. So we'll just pull it out and then it'll just be gone. If we have time, we can put something else in and we can cycle another crop in there. You know, maybe we'll do some turnips. Maybe we'll do some rutabagas. Maybe, I mean, if we're really short on time, we'll do some more radishes, something like that. Just really quick turnaround to get it in and out of the garden. And that's what this is really good for. So you can see just one row in itself can produce all you need for that one plant. Now, we also have the same behind me here in our lettuce. And this is really where my harvesting technique has changed based on the season. Now, I used to come into the garden and I used to do the cut and come again only for lettuce, and it worked out great. But this year I tried something a little bit different and it worked out even better at the right time of year. So what we did, 4x8 bed, and we stacked it full of lettuce, as much as we could get in there. And I harvested the entire plant. And it seems kind of crazy because if you look at it right here, these plants are in really good shape, and we haven't even started harvesting off of them yet at all. But once we cut this plant's gone. It may grow some offshoots or something, but ultimately it's just done. In the spring, that's actually not a bad thing because ultimately in my area, it's just a matter of time before it bolts. So we can get it out, we can get a whole head in there and be done. But in the fall, that's a little bit different. What we'll do in the fall, because ultimately what will end up happening is, and we even have this set up for a low tunnel so we can extend our harvest period, is we'll leave this in here, but you can see like here, we've got a couple, like this one's getting shaded. So we could essentially just trim it and then this will grow up and we'll have another plant. But we can come out and just harvest from each plant, just, you know, your regular cut and come again. But we're not worried about it bolting per se. What we're worried about is the frost getting it and it getting really cold and killing it. Now we may not have that issue, especially since we're in a new zone now. But, and I'm joking when I say that, but if you think about it, like this amount of lettuce right here doesn't seem like an incredible amount, but it can make all the difference. And we can come out here and again, we need a salad. We can trim a plant, get a salad. If we want to make a week's worth, we can trim all the plants, but leave the core of the plant in and do it so we're adjusting the way we plant over the year. Now, if I wasn't completely honest with you and not tell you that the reason why we have so few is because our seedlings didn't do as well in the fall or in the summer when we started them, then that would be lying. But that's why we have so few. But this is always a fail-safe method because let's face it, these accidents happen every time. Every year something happens. But we've also got a different kind of lettuce in the garden. So this is that Tom Thumb Bib lettuce that I was talking about. And this will get probably about twice that big, but then we'll just cut this and be done. And so as these grow, we can harvest these and enjoy them. And then we can harvest these, all of these, and enjoy them. And then we can come back and get some of this, take this. So essentially, if everything goes according to plan, what we'll end up happening by the time we really start to get too cold to harvest for these lettuces to survive easily is we'll end up having just these in here. And then as that happens, we can come and cut the whole plant before it goes to waste. So you do need a lot of lettuce planted, I'm not gonna lie. But the benefit is in 1 square foot, technically you can put 4. I put 2 or 3 in there, depending on how I feel and the variety of it. But you can put a lot of lettuce in a small area. For instance, this spring, we had 2 rows of lettuce, 2 8-foot rows of lettuce, and I could only eat about half of it. And that was me eating it and giving it away. So there was a lot of waste happen, but we had plenty if we needed it, and that was a good thing to learn. So this year, we may only do 1 row. Depends on how long this lettuce here lasts. Now, I do want to take a second and just really appreciate the beauty of this lettuce. It is absolutely beautiful. It's looking really good. And we're gonna start harvesting it probably in a couple days. We're waiting for Thanksgiving, and then we usually have a fresh salad, and so we wanna have plenty for everybody, but this is a definite way to make that happen. We also have the greenhouse back here, And you know, it's a tight space, so we really have to use these methods really carefully and diligently in here to make sure that it's lasting as much as possible, because in the fall you run out of time to replant. You can't really replant all the time, so we have to be very careful. So you can just look in our garden in here in the greenhouse and see what we've got going on. This whole back row is all cut and come again. We've got a couple kale plants again. We've got a couple mustards back here. You know, we've got our lettuces here. And actually these lettuces are just harvest. They're the Tom Thumbs, so we'll take ahead and be done. But we can plant more in here earlier than outside, so it kind of works out, and we've planned for that. And then we've got a whole side of spinach, and we've started harvesting off that. So once we get that going really good, then it's just cut and come again, cut and come again, cut and come again all winter long, and we can handle that. But if you look in the front row, we've got our bok choy. Now in the last video or two ago, I did start harvesting it, but I was able to plug it right back in, so you can see needs to be harvested, brand new. Needs to be harvested, brand new, on down the line. We use this to our advantage in the greenhouse. Man, it's hot in there right now. I'm now in zone 8B in North Carolina, and it is 80 degrees today. So you can see it's a little bit warm. But in the greenhouse, we utilize that because we don't want to have to replant it in the middle of winter. We want to be able to harvest in the middle of winter and keep it going as long as possible. And if we need to replenish it, then we can do that in the very late winter when everything, so we should be able to plant our lettuce, another round of lettuce in there about 1 month to 2 weeks earlier than out in the garden, but it should also grow fast in there because of the heat. So we can, you know, that's also an option. We also have our multi-purpose plants. And so this is a bed of rutabaga, and I'm gonna lump these together with like turnips. So you can eat the roots, you can eat the greens, you can eat them both. You can't, I mean, you can eat the root, pull the roots, eat the greens at the same time. You can harvest the greens while the roots are growing and eat them. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't eat the greens, but there is an option you can have. And again, we planted this because we want this bed to rest as well. We want to top it off and we want it to rest. So we can pull all of these out all at once over a period of time and just rebuild this bed as needed and rework it and get it ready for next year. So this is a great way to make sure that that's going to happen. In the spring, if we were to eat the greens off the rutabagas and turnips and stuff like that, we would not cut them. We would just grow them until we get the root, and then we'd be done. Because again, it's going to get hot and they're going to get funky and start to bolt and grow too fast, and you know, it could just be a hot mess. So you know, we can change and adapt our methods to growing around the climate and the weather patterns that are prevailing in your area at certain times. And it's important for you to remember that, because this is how you make yourself be able to grow what you can out of 10 garden beds out of 1 or 2, just by utilizing these methods. And that's super important.